All right, everyone. Hello, welcome in. Episode 14, Body Movement Podcast. There's my younger sister on the bottom, Dr. Allison Sinikowski. And we are welcoming and stepping in out of our comfort zone big time today. We're welcoming the coach from Hotlanta, ATL, Coach Felecia Killings. Coach, welcome to our podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for letting me grace your platform. I'm really excited about today's chat.
You are gracing our platform. Felecia Killings is the CEO and founder and visionary of FeleciaKillings.org and the Conscious Conservative Movement. You can find her on Twitter. We're really interested to talk about her growth on there. She's got well over 10,000 followers now. So really interested to learn how you grew that base from kind of grassroots. But she does a lot of work with single mothers in the local neighborhood. She's now going national with that program. She does a lot of work on actually unifying white and Black people and that conversation that's going on in America, and just bringing a level-headedness to the craziness that is our media and our social media and all these outlets. And you're building a strong community around tackling an institution, which we were talking just before this, I hit the record button here, and it's something we're trying to do in tackling a broken institution in healthcare. You're doing it in politics, you're doing it in socioeconomic spheres. So we're really interested to hear your story, and just kind of, I don't even know where to start the conversation with you, because it's like a five-fold, it's not even triple-fold, it's like a five-fold, five-dimensional thing. But so one, congratulations on all your success and everything you've been doing. How have you found it? Because I've been following you for a while, and one of the things of being on Twitter and in the public sphere is, you put your life out there.
Yeah.
And, I've listened to a few of your podcasts. Most recently, I went back and listened to your one with Bridget Fedesi, because that was a really awesome appearance. And you were not really, you said you were compelled to do this, but this was not something like that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
Kind of get in the public sphere, put your name in it. You like to be this back of house person, much like my sister down below, working with patients, just curing people out of the limelight. And here I am, I'm getting both of you who are like, let's like vocalize this and let's get my sister's message out. And you've been doing that. How has that been for you? Like, were you stepping out of your comfort zone when you did this? And are you getting used to it? Are you liking it now? Or are you still more in that I'm compelled to be in the public sphere and driving conversations?
It's a little bit of both. First, Bridget is just, I love her so much. She was the first podcaster that I shared my story with
Is
on
that your
a
first
public
appearance?
platform. Yeah.
Okay.
And I talk about it in my book called To My Beloveds. And so she read my book and she was like, Felecia, I want you on a podcast.
Yeah.
So she was actually the first person that I shared my story with. And even if you read my memoir, you'll read that I framed it as this interview that I'm having with a person. And even though I'm telling my truth, I'm telling my story about what the tragedy that happened to me and how God delivered me. I framed it this way because I felt like this is just much more comfortable for me. I'm able to talk to someone who probably is not going to be so, antagonistic or anything like that. And so it's ironic that Bridget was the first person, the first podcaster to interview me. And in a way, you might say that Bridget is in the book interviewing me herself. So I loved it. And one of the questions she did ask was, what motivated you, something along those lines, to come forth and be public. And I did tell her, I said, I felt compelled to do this thing. And I say that because I'm just a very private person. I love the gift that God gave me, which is to teach and to inspire, to empower. And I started teaching when I was as young as 11 years old in my dad's church, working as a Sunday school teacher or helper. So that's just what I did. And so bringing that to Fairfield, California, and then working with a few hundred students every year, I just felt like that was it. Like I could die happy now that I have completed this task. But then God has this funny way of pushing us out of our elements and pushing us beyond our limitations. And that's what I've discovered over these last few years. In 2016, I talk about to my beloveds a lot in my newsletter or in the book.
Yep.
I say that, during that time period, I felt the Holy Spirit unctioning me to go and start this virtual platform. And I had no clue what he was talking about. I never even heard virtual ministries or virtual Bible study. I just was like, what is this? So I go to Google,
Yeah.
and Google doesn't help me because it's all negative stuff, right? Like when something new hits the church, it's mostly negative.
Yeah.
So I just started to hop on Facebook, and I just started sharing about Bible teachings and helping women like with book publishing or sharing their stories.
Yeah.
And then I would give Bible lessons and whatnot. And the women really enjoyed it. And then politics happened. Like people were
Right.
in an uproar
Yeah,
because,
that's something people don't realize. Like, you're very vocal in the politics space, but this was not your intent. Your intent
right.
was just to help people, and through that, you found out how politics has infiltrated our life. But
Yeah.
so keep going with that thought. But it was
Okay.
very. That's one of the things that I always found interesting is you
Yeah.
weren't even you
I
weren't you're
wasn't
not,
even,
and you're still not. I don't think a political pundit in my mind.
I know.
Yeah.
So in 2016, people were very upset about President Trump, well, at the time, just Trump running for office, him winning the GOP nomination. And growing up, my father raised me and my sister as conservative. So we've always been a Black conservative. That's all we know. There was no red pill moment. Nobody came and
Yeah.
saved Felecia from whatever. I've just always, these are my foundations. So
Right.
when people saw that Trump won, they were like, Felecia, aren't you upset? And I was getting all these messages in my messenger on Facebook. And they were like, why don't you change your profile to the Obamas to show support? And after about the 10th message, I had enough. So I went on Facebook. I said, I've never voted for Obama. Stop bothering me about Obama. Da, 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 da. And then I just said, I'm a conservative. I've always believed in these values. I don't support. And next thing you know, that thing went viral. Before I knew it, a flood of conservatives that I never even knew that there was this world of conservative politics in social media, but they just started flooding my account. And at that point, that's when I started to really talk more about my values and how conservatism has been truly empowering to me. And for a while, the women who were associated with me during that time did not like it. So that dropped
Right.
off. And I just thought, oh Lord, I have ruined your virtual ministry. I ruined what it told me to do. But it turned out to actually expand my platform where I did not feel like I had to give up my teachings about the Holy Spirit or spirituality. Instead, I was able to show like the kingdom message, which I talk about a lot on my platform, can be injected in everything, like things like the law of love, the law of grace and
Right.
forgiveness, truth. All of these things can be injected in everywhere because we're dealing with humans, right? So, as such, I have to demonstrate God's love in everything that I do. So that's really how it came about. And there have been so many times when I wanted to back away from it because politics is brutal. It is, metaphorically
Right.
speaking, it's a
Right.
bloodbath. And I feel like unless you're called to be in this place, don't jump into it because it's just not for the faint at heart. And that's why I was sharing with Bridget. I
Yeah.
was more so compelled to this thing. I had no desire to be in a forefront like that, but
Yeah.
God just has a way of doing things his own way. And I just
Right.
told him
Right.
years ago, I'd always be a voice for him. I'd always speak and help others. So
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting your story, because doing that was not even being in politics. When you say conservative, and by the way, you're talking to two pretty, and I've even mentioned this when we caught up a month ago when I invited you on, I don't know, apolitical, independent, like we're and I even told to Ellison when, we're doing physical therapy and healthcare here. I was like, but I'm going to reach out to people and have some uncomfortable conversations.
yeah,
And she was like, because I was like, because I think we can learn and take these lessons to what we're doing.
yeah,
And when you're saying conservative, you're not talking Republican and Democrat, and
no,
you're not even talking, even though we can get into
yeah,
policies, but you're just talking the way I live my life. And
Yes.
conservative values is you believe in a higher power, you
Yes.
believe in a strong family,
Yes.
you believe in the individual, you don't
Yeah.
believe in a big government telling you what to do. that's and then maybe the policies come further down the
Right.
road, because if the government infringes on those things, then you're like, okay, now it's time to speak up and get active. So
Yeah.
when you're saying conservative, you're just talking about the way you live your life,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Conservatism to me is a lifestyle. It is not a political party. And
Right.
this is one of the reasons why I throw so much fire at the Republican Party, because they champion being the conservative party. And I'm like, no,
They're
you're
not.
not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Look
Yeah.
at the way you treat Black voters. Look at the way you treat other individuals. This in no way speaks about conservatism.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's more so a lifestyle and an upbringing, and
Yeah.
these values which are rooted in spiritual truths, like I shared earlier, the laws of love, grace, mercy,
Right.
forgiveness, all these things. These are conservative because they help us to engage with one another in a way that conserves humanity. And when we appreciate these values and we use them to our benefit,
Yeah.
it's so much more, it's easier to get along, right? Like
Right.
if you know I'm coming from a place of love, you don't have to worry about me trying to murder you, right? You see how I'm saying these things just kind of,
Right. You just casually, and we're just
yeah.
listening, right? Yeah. There's
That's,
no.
and that's what I always like. I always say to people, like, I don't care. Like Matt said, like very like apolitical. I think I'm learning much more over the last
Yeah,
4 to 5 years in my life. But like, but just be nice. Just
right.
Like
be
whatever,
nice.
yeah, like
Like
whatever
just be
happened to that.
nice.
Yeah.
You know, it was interesting. I had a woman in here as a patient. You know, we chit chat, we talk, and you know, sometimes things go away, and I don't ever want to just make anybody, they're in pain, right? I don't want to make anybody mad. So, you know, like, so I just, you know, just if somebody brings something up, we have casual conversation, what have you. But this woman was talking about, you know, just meeting somebody they were picking out a card for an anniversary, and just the conversation that these guys had was beautiful. And she goes, I wonder what she'd have thought if I had had, you know, my political, I won't even say what sides of anything, you know, like what if I had had something supporting the Obamas on, how would they have treated me? You know,
Yeah.
or, you know, like we could thought like aftermath of just like this lovely conversation two people can have and have such differing views. And that doesn't matter if you are just a nice person.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And I like that conservative thought of things. Yeah.
yeah, and I think when we get to that place where politics has humanity added to it, then we see a much different picture, and that's what I'm trying to bring with the conscious conservative movement, with my team members, and even with those who are affiliated with our movement, different voices and whatnot. You'll always hear us talking about love and compassion and empowerment for our communities.
Yeah.
And when we do talk politics, the actual policies, we are looking at policies that aren't going to infringe on the individual rights.
Yeah.
So, you know, whether it's religion or whether it's economics, you know, these are
Yeah.
things that we tackle. And we're like, in order for us to be most successful, we do have to have certain policies in place that will protect what it is that we're trying to do locally. So I don't want to get ahead. I don't know.
No,
You're
no,
right.
I
You're
love
good.
everything you're saying, and I and it's yeah, making the connection between, and because it's interesting when I follow, you know, and again, I've been following you for a long time, but you're saying all these things, and I guess it's just the nature of Twitter too, because you do come hard on Twitter sometimes on
Yeah.
people, right? So, but that's the nature. Like you have to, on Twitter, you have 200 characters. You got to shake people and say, "Hey, I got something to say," and that's
Yes.
supposed to give you a window into a bigger thing. But then I always see your videos, and you're just like so nice and sweet, and I'm like, who is this person tweeting this fire message, just like coming at people? But it's more you're just trying to grab attention and start the conversation, I think.
Yes.
And it's interesting that you're coming from a place of love. You've clearly articulated already in the first 5 minutes of the podcast. Yet, when because politics has gotten so heated, you're also catching shit from both sides. I see. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So like, obviously, you are in the minority of a minority,
Yes.
being on the side of the political spectrum. So
Yeah.
you are going against the majority of people that look like you from a
Yeah.
demographic standpoint politically. So
Yeah.
that's got to be, I don't know, you got to feel maybe, pun intended, like a little black swanish there, like, like an
Yeah.
outlier dealing with your own people, but you're coming from love. So maybe that's a way to disarm it. And then on this side, you're saying, I'm voting with you, but I don't like what you guys are saying.
Yeah.
And I'm holding you accountable for
Yeah.
what you're doing. And these are like, we, again, only in the past 4 years has our family and circle of friends even talked politics more. And I think that's just the case across every living room and
Yeah.
Thanksgiving dinner the past 4 years. But the way our conversations have been shaped by social media is to
Mhm.
just say, okay, here's the point over here, here's the point here, debate and see who remembers what the other side is supposed to say and regurgitate what your favorite news program says. And whoever
Yeah.
can remember the most things wins the argument. And then what is solved? Absolutely nothing besides like you're hated. So yet you're coming in there and you're like, I'm not even playing that game. And so
Right.
now both sides are like, well, if you're not playing that game, then like fuck off, for like what do
Right.
you, who are you? And that's what we're trying to do with healthcare.
Okay.
Actually, it's like healthcare is broken, people can't afford it, the system is incentivized to get us on pain pills and drugs versus actually curing things. And here we are trying to get a message like, hey, take control of your own body. And it's like,
Yeah.
we're not even having the conversation everyone else is having over here. You're
Mhm.
not having the same conversation. So you kind of get it from both sides, even though you're trying to do it peacefully and with love. So
Yeah.
how has that dynamic been going for you? I mean, it's one thing to watch you on Twitter, interact with everyone, get in some debates, but I mean, you're growing, so it is resonating.
Right.
But
It's working.
is it as big as an uphill battle as it seems?
Yeah, yes, it is. And I would say that between 2018 and 2020, I got the most hits from conservatives because they assumed that if I'm speaking something negative about them, then it meant that I was causing or telling Black voters to vote the same way, which is all Democrat. So they didn't even hear the message entirely until November 2020 came and Trump lost. After I had been warning them, this loss is going to come unless you pivot.
Yeah.
Today, it is much different because everything that I said during those years have come to pass. And so
Right.
now it's like perspective for a lot of conservatives, and they're asking themselves, maybe we should have listened to Coach Felecia. Maybe we should have listened to the
Yeah.
Hoteps or Sonny Johnson or many of these other individuals because they were
Yeah.
telling us, they were warning us.
Yeah.
So I got it from conservatives, but today it's not as bad. And I say that only because they know that we were right the whole time. And
Right.
now they're in position to where they're asking themselves, is there a better way? And of course, there is a better way in doing outreach and whatnot.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Black voters, I didn't get very much pushback compared to what you might hear from typical Black conservatives who say that Black voters don't listen to them.
Right.
And the truth is, when I did come to Twitter and I started talking about conservatism, I did get a little backlash from Black voters because they thought I was going to be just like the other Black conservatives who degrade and belittle Black voters.
Yeah.
And I was like, heck no, I love
Right.
Black people. I love Black culture. I
Right.
love Black history. Like, I'm rocking the I just love Black, 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 you know?
Right. Right.
And so as I proved to them, like, no, I really do love you.
Right.
Then the defenses went down. And I still said, but straight up, I'm conservative. I vote Republican. I love, politics that protect economics.
Right.
Then it was easier for me to talk to them. And that's actually why I broke away from just the title of Black conservative and I added the adjective conscious Black conservative
Yeah. I love
to it
that.
because I had to tell voters, both Black and white,
Yeah.
I'm very conscious or aware of Blackness. I'm conscious of spiritual laws. I'm conscious of conservatism. I'm aware of these things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not ignoring it. I'm not pretending like racism is just magically went away like conservatives like to pretend. I
Right.
said, no, I'm conscious of this, but I'm also conscious of how conservatism empowered individuals just like myself to conquer some of the most heinous racist systems in American history. And so
Yeah.
when I frame my message in that way, it breaks down barriers. All
Yeah.
of a sudden, Black voters are not angry with me. Like, none of them will ever call me a bad name. And if
Right.
you see any Black voters trying to come at me, those other Black voters will be on them like, she's legit. Don't
Yeah.
mess with her. And when it comes to conservatives,
Yeah.
like I said, at this point, like as soon as 2021 hit in January, they were just very different towards me. Like, whatever
Mhm.
you want, Felecia, we'll listen
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
But again, it was because of, the constant warnings and the teachings that I brought to Twitter class. It was all confirmed. And all of a sudden it was like, maybe we should pay attention this next round. So that's
Yeah.
how I've been able to manage it.
Yeah, and I mean, it feels like a heavy load, but you have a lot of support, so it's like you
Yeah,
can see it growing, and for the record, it's no different in white circles anymore. It's like, if you voting on one side, or if you support somebody, you'll hear, you're brainwashed,
yeah,
or you believe everything you read in the media, and and it's just people calling each other stupid, like the stupid or dumb, or you don't know what you're talking about, and the debates go nowhere. So you're not really in the debate sphere. You're just saying, here's ideas I believe in, and
yeah,
here's how I think we can solve problems. And that is the mindset, like, I'm trying to connect here with Allison, is like, she's been so good at her job for years and fixing people with chronic pain that never said they were going to walk again, or they're going to have surgery, and 6 months, 6 weeks later, they're deadlifting 150 pounds and
wow,
overcoming all this massive stuff. And but it's harder to get that message out than just cool taglines and slogans, right? It's
yeah,
like the marketing machine behind getting your message out. And that's what I'm interested in too, kind of to segue, is, you know, it's a longer, slower burn, it feels like, to get that message out, because
yeah,
it's cool to have a great name like Conscious Conservative Network. It's cool to say that, but like, I mean, I've learned more, even following you for a year. I've already picked up in the first
mhm,
15 minutes of what you're trying to do, but because it took like that conversation to happen.
yeah.
Um, is that a challenge, or still, or are you, and I know people have seen it, but is it you're trying to find that way to mass market and scale a little bit more efficiently? Is that kind of where you're at, like, to get to that next level? And
Yeah,
are you even trying to get to, well, I guess you are, you're going national with your grocery campaign for single mothers,
yeah.
right? But is that the challenge? Like, because the left seems very good at marketing and
Mhm,
slogans and shirts
mhm.
and taglines and calling somebody a name, and that name then registers 100 different thoughts in everyone's brain, where
Yeah,
this has been a 20-minute conversation to really understand where you're coming from.
yeah,
And I'm just trying to think, as we're building our platform, teaching people to not rely on their doctors is what we're doing. We're calling out our
yeah,
own system that Allison's a part of.
yeah,
How do you, is that the next challenge, to like scale that and make
mhm,
those messages more coherent and sticky, to, so that people
yeah.
resonate with everything you're saying?
Yeah, well, I could say it like this. We are definitely in the scaling phase, and
Yeah.
my mind thinks in systems. So I
Thank you.
even knew when I first started, like before I go viral, I need to build my system so that when I go viral on Facebook or Twitter, people know where to go. So in my mind, I had the whole channels all set up. And even when I first went viral on Facebook, I noticed this flood coming, but I had nothing for them to do. Like, do you sign up for email lists? Do you buy a product? Like, I just had no system. So I actually put a pause. I stopped creating content. I went back and started building my system up. Then I came back and started punching people in the mouth with my tweets and my posts.
Right, right, right.
Now go to my funnel and whatnot. So I
Yeah.
learned about all of this from studying online business and how different individuals began to expand their platform. And this is actually a teaching that I bring to the women who are part of my beloved women's ministry. I
Yep.
show them how to take their message, whatever God gave to them, And I say, this is how you create a movement around what it is that you're doing. So I actually treat movement creation as a type of marketing method. And this is the technical stuff that people don't know about.
Yeah, no, but this is good.
But
Yeah.
what you could do is if you both came up with a name for what it is that you're trying to do, and it's something catchy, it has meaning, it has purpose to it, what you want to do is create a whole movement around it, like a hashtag if you wanted to, or something. And what you
Yeah.
do is you start creating conversations around the core tenets of that movement. So the core tenets of conscious conservatism focuses on spiritual laws. Everybody knows every time Coach pops up, she's going to talk to us about spiritual laws. So after a while, the online space comes to recognize your name, your brand, your face, your podcast
This is
as
really
like
important
one or
stuff.
two, yeah, of like really important, maybe 2 to 3 core principles
Yeah.
that everyone else will start to pick up on. And then what happens is you start to repeat the same message, even if it comes in different formats.
Yeah.
Because what you want is for your audience to start replicating what you are saying. So
They become your marketers, right?
they become your marketers. They become your best spokespersons or your best ambassadors. That's how the conscious conservative movement grew. So you'll hear people say things like progressivism is not charity. Well, that's the name of my new book coming out. So it's already locked in their head. Like, I got to purchase this new book from Coach Cumming.
Right.
Or conscious Black conservatism is now almost mainstream. Or
It is, yeah.
a Twitter class, just that phrase alone, everybody knows that's
I love
Coach
that you call it class. I know.
yeah. So what you do is you pick of course, you start with your main message. Like, what's the purpose of what it is you're trying to do? And it might be, our purpose is to break down the traditional way of the medical field. I mean, it could be whatever it is that you want.
Which is what we did is, yeah.
Yeah, you just begin to repeat that to your audience in your podcast, in your blog post, or wherever you're at.
Yeah.
And then you give the people the language that you want them to use. So my language is very different from Sunny Johnson. I'm much more, you won't see me cussing on Twitter class.
Sunny's a beast though.
Yes, but right. But you can tell like it's still impactful. It's her voice. This is my voice. This is everybody else's voice. So you want to figure out what is your tone, what's your diction, what's your all of that is a part of your brand. And the more you start to push that out there on a daily basis, and this is one of the challenges that certain folks coming in have that challenge.
I think
coming
we're gonna have it
daily. But that's when you really get to the scaling phase, because you do have to be present all the time. And I mean, it's to the point where if I don't show up on Twitter, folks think something's wrong. So I have to tell them, I'm out for today. I'll see you guys tomorrow.
It's like reporting to work. I mean, you, Felecia, you're there every day. Like, especially you get going early sometimes too. Chicken. Like you are an active woman on that platform.
Yeah. I feel like we've talked a lot, like, everybody we've talked to. So, guests that we've had so far have been, what their movement is, and I think Fred Duncan said it best, is it's my life, right? Like, this is my life. Like, that saying really resonated with me, in that, what I'm looking to do from the medical side, like, that is my life. I talk about it all the time. I talk about it when I'm home. I talk about it when I'm with my family. I talk about it with my kids. I talk about it with my patients. They're sick of me. They're not, but like, that kind of stuff, and just so many parallels from and we find this, and this is kind of like building to be my role in the podcast, I think, is like making these parallels is, like, even in the beginning, you said, when you go to look up something on the internet, the message that most people are trying to share isn't there. It's the message that is wherever the vested interests are, and whoever has the strongest platform, thus who has the best vested interests, who has the most money into it. And you look at that from, from my side as well. Like, you look at trying to change people's thoughts about whatever it is, about movement, about their fitness, about their health. And if you go online and read about something, it never comes back to the basics. It never comes back to the root of who we are and what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I love that fact of like, building the content. My colleague and I are talking about that right now. We're building a certain platform, and we're like, we have to get everything there. So if you go look up our names, we're there. You have to keep building all of this stuff when you're trying to get, to the major platform.
Yeah. And it starts small. And that's one of the things that I would say to new content creators or experts who are trying to transition. You start with what you have. So, you mentioned that you talk about medical stuff all the time with your kids and everywhere. I would get a video camera like your little iPhone and just record yourself talking and then press publish on YouTube or on LinkedIn or wherever you have a platform already.
Yeah.
Because what happens is people love authenticity. They love just the raw, nitty gritty kind of conversations. And they also like controversy. So the reason why my platform has grown so rapidly is because I'm punching hard against something like Black conservative ink. That's what my brother Jeff calls it. But I'm going against the grain. I'm not swimming with everybody else. So I'm not.
But there's a difference in how you're doing it. You're not doing it just to do it. You know what I mean? Like you really, there are people that will go against the grain to get the attention. You're doing it because you really believe it, right? So that's an important distinction.
Very much so. And the people will pay attention to that as well. So for the folks who want to pretend like they're like right now, conscious Black conservatives are being called the woke conservatives. That's kind of the hit going on with us. So whenever conservatives see the word woke, they're instantly antagonistic towards it. But because we've been here so long already, we've established credibility and authority. We've proven ourselves. Because now these hits, if you will, they don't stick. So my point is that people love authenticity, and it takes a while to build that, especially because the online space, everything can happen so fast. You can become famous tomorrow, but unless you have the foundation, unless you have your core principles, your purpose, and you really do know your end goal. Like maybe your end goal is to help 1,000 people become better versions of themselves in the health field, doing things in an organic way. Like that's a cool mission statement.
Right.
If that is what you're trying
Good thing I'm recording this and go back and write that down.
If that's what you're trying to do, then stick with that goal, because as the hits come, because you'll get hit because you're going against the grain, you'll remain focused on the principles. And people love, even though they might not say it, they actually love principles. They love authenticity. They love what's real. They hate being lied to, right? Like they don't want to be swindled. So if you can promise them like, hey, I got some great content for you that's going to help change your life, and you deliver, now you've created a loyal reader. You've created a loyal viewer. And once they become loyal to you, you can try and vanish all you want, but they will pull you back. They have pulled me back so many times.
Yeah, they want you now.
So a question to that is, when I think one of the walls, like I try to break down, and I don't want to say it's lying from the medical field per se, because a lot of it is, medical providers are burnt out. They don't keep up with research. So I truly feel that a lot of medical providers are doing their best, but they're not doing their best at staying up on what the latest is. So, so how do you battle something like that where you truly see or believe, it could be opinion or it could be research based, what the truth is, and not tell people what they've known is not right.
Oh, God,
right. So
we
walk this line all the time of like I had a woman today. She's like, well, how is this connected to my bursa and my hip? I'm like, I don't know if it was ever in my head. In my head, I said it was never your bursa. Number one, you got an injection there, but it was never your bursa. But that's not what I told her. I kind of made it cushy and said, well, when you change something here, you can aggravate your bursa. But if that was still what was going on, you would see X, Y, and Z, and it wouldn't respond to the movements of your back. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. I totally agree. Right. So how do you battle that? Like, what the truth is versus what you see.
And
So
and that's good because Felicia, I know you do a lot of work on combating false
Yes.
stats and all
Yes.
this stuff. So this would be this. It's a perfect question for her because I've seen her do this before. So go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah.
what you do is you tell the truth. And then you give people choices. You show them, okay, I know you've been told this, but here's truth. I
Yeah.
know you've been told this particular without actually saying it's a lie. Now, I can tell conservatives in politics, you've been lied to. Y'all been hoodwinked, you've been bamboozled, you've been swindled.
Yeah.
But politics is very different where you have to be blunt.
Yeah,
You have to be.
you're threading a harder needle,
Yeah.
and it's more personal to people, even though health in your body is very personal, but it's
Yeah.
values versus making your body feel better is a whole different ball game.
Right. And you have to remember your audience. So if speaking to, like the individual you just mentioned, if it's possible for you not to be hard and direct with her, then don't be hard and direct with her. Come the way you just did because it worked. But if you come across somebody who's like, no, the doctor said an apple a day keeps the doctor away, and that's the law of the land.
Right.
Like, sir, this is what you have. You get what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So it's about knowing your audience. And even if you started to create, let's say, blog post where you say, like, I'm dispelling 15 myths within the medical field as it relates to ... This is another way. So you come from this educational perspective, as opposed to, I'm telling the truth. These people are liars. Don't listen to them anymore.
And you don't know what you're talking about.
And you don't, right.
You're stupid.
It's more so an educational standpoint. And what this does is it breaks down the barriers that people automatically have, because no one wants to be told that they were lied to.
Right.
So they're going to have ego, right? And they don't want to be told that they're wrong. But if you teach it to them, and this goes back to voice, this goes back to tone, diction, and whatnot.
Yeah.
If you teach them, now all of a sudden you are empowering them. And you're doing it in a way that makes them feel more intelligent and more functional and more of an adult. And it adds to their self-esteem. It gives them stronger self-esteem. So that's how I would approach it. And that's actually how I have approached it with Twitter class. Again, at times I do have to be tough with them because I don't like repeating myself a gabillion times with the same lesson.
You're very clear on that one too.
But at the same time, I do understand, like, for example, one of the challenges is conservatives generally do not fellowship with Black Americans. All of their perception about Black communities is coming from their conservative media outlets.
Yeah.
Well, conservative media always lie. They're always going to say the absolute worst. Conservative media will have all of America thinking that 99% of Black people are vigilantes and murderers and all these things, when it's just not even 1% of our population. So conservatives are running with those stereotypes because they don't fellowship and they only turn to media to tell them what's going on. Yeah. So what Sunny and I have had to do was to bring teachings and history and authentic lessons to say, this is what's happening. And here's what's taking place in our communities right now. Yeah. This has actually been a struggle for conservatives who have had what is called lost cause history for so many decades. And so now they're like little children who are being taught a new lesson, like they've never heard it before. And when they come to this new lesson, at times we can be very patient and cordial with them because they're receiving it. And then at other times you just run into folks who are like, no, Black people are slaves and they need to get it together. Well, you need to catch this block. And while you're getting blocked, I'm going to drag you, you know? So you just have to figure out, and you have to be very knowledgeable about to whom you're speaking. So when I'm talking to the women inside the women's ministry, I'm not hard with them at all. I don't have to be hard with women. I can just say, you know, I understand you. I'm a woman myself. You know, let's talk woman to woman. Right. But if it's dealing with politics, I have to punch a little bit harder. And it just comes across most effectively because I know my audience. And that's an advantage to you, Allison, because you know your patients, you know the people, right? And you can bring their stories, their ailments to your blog or your podcast. And you can say like, hey, you know, I was talking to this one patient and da 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 da. She was telling me this story and this is what I gave to her. And now all of a sudden her life is so much different. Well, to someone who's watching your video or reading your your blog post, they're going to say, oh my gosh, I have got to call Allison. She can help me with this issue. Like if you sell a service or book or whatever, I've got to get her a book. I've got to get this product from her because I know she can help me. And it's because they start to see themselves in the stories that you're bringing to your platform. And again, before long, you'll start to just kind of grow and grow from there. And, you know, one day it'll just hit viral because that's just what happens. Virality is kind of like a magic wand that takes place when the person is really ready for it. And that's when you start to scale on a bigger level.
Yeah, I'm nervous of that because
yeah,
because we're going, like, you know, we're 14 episodes in, and Al, sorry to cut you off. You can go in a minute here, but she's been like everything you're saying, like we're doing slowly but surely, like we're sharing stories, we're sharing anecdotes, we're making the comparisons to people doing in other fields like yours.
Yeah.
And you know, but we just got the one platform, but I'm not doing live streams. I'm not you know, like we're releasing, like after this, it'll take me 2-3 days, maybe even a week to release this episode, by the way, like just because like I edit it and then I want to make sure that I plan out how we're going to share little snippets of this with everybody. And because I'm afraid if we start going too fast, we're going to hit something, and it's already been happening. She's getting questions of, hey, how do I fix this? How do I do that? And but you know, they're sprinkling in like a couple, like she had a phone call with one of my buddies who was just like, my back hurts, what can I do? And I'm like, well, I'm not the guy, like Allison's guy. So I'm sure that it sounds like, and you did that, you had to hit the pause button when you were getting your message out there because you knew what you wanted to say, but then to organize people, which is not what you asked for, though. I don't even know if you were looking to do that, right? So that moment, I think we will need to get ready for eventually, and because we're not gonna, won't know when it's gonna come.
Right.
And it sounded like that's what happened to you. It came and you weren't ready, and you're like, all right, I'll see you in a little bit.
Yes. Allison, you had a question?
You're on mute.
That's because they're drilling something into the wall.
I know, I heard them.
Sorry. Like not just a small drill, like bringing like everything possible. There must be hanging like a bar, like whatever.
Perfect.
So sorry for the noise before.
No, you're good.
But I was just gonna say the communication side of things, is just such a parallel to everybody we've had on at this point. I mean, thinking about Matt last PT World last podcast is that,
we had an educator who's totally revamping youth education.
Right. But like the ability of us to communicate to one another is a lost art everywhere. And that, the story you said of like, your people, like, and that's something that we talk about, and we're bringing on new PTs. We're talking about how are we going to help them understand how to communicate? How do you connect to somebody? Do you look at what's on your shirt and like start talking about, oh, what's that? And what's this? And, start to learn them and find them out. That's no different in building trust and relationship for whatever anybody's dealing with.
Right.
Communication side of things is enormous. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but in the online space, you have to have these relationships, and it happens very differently because we have to be able to ascertain your attitude with the words you use, the tweets you put out, the posts you put out there. Like people aren't going to feel your physical vibes because they're not in your, physical geographical location. So it's like, how do you bring your personality to the online space? Well, you do that using the written and the spoken word. This is, again, something I teach the women to do because I want them to learn how to use their stories, no matter how scandalous, controversial, difficult they are. There's a message in those stories, and that message is something that's going to resonate with a certain group of readers or viewers in the online space. And really, your job is to figure out where they are, where are they located, and how can I help them best? And once you start to give value to them through your content, then they'll start to just say, they'll feel this urge like, I have to buy something from you, or I have to hire your service, or can I donate to you? This is actually how you move into full-time content creation or full-time entrepreneurship, whatever it is that you're going to do.
Yep.
But you have to start with those strong online communication channels, so that you, again, know your readers, you know your viewers, the same way
Yeah.
that you know your patients and your family members. This happens when you are engaged online every single day. So the reason why I call my audience my beloveds is because, one, it's such a hostile, politics is hostile, like I mentioned earlier.
Right.
So I have to have some love
Yeah. Yeah.
going in there, right?
Of
And
course.
so now people understand, okay, Felicia's platform is about love. She calls her audience her beloveds, ... And I
So
just
smart.
know them
Yep.
because they engage with me. They talk to me. I know some of their stories and whatnot. And this actually helps me to frame a lot of the content that I publish every day through my newsletter or through my blog. I know exactly who I'm talking to. I know the purpose for this newsletter. Let's put it out there. Like today's Twitter class is devoted towards raising money for this other mom who is doing great work in the community.
I read
Well,
your
beloveds
article.
right now, at this point, they know, like, hey, coach is raising money, let's get on it, to
Yep.
help with our communities. So that's where you will get to be. And once you start to present something consistently, and you know your audience, give them a name. I mean, give them
Yeah.
a tribe name, like say, hey, we're the I don't know, just something really
No, I'm
neat.
with you.
Yeah, just something really neat, because people want to feel so connected.
Yeah.
And a lot of folks can't get that connection in, the real world, if you will,
Yeah.
but they can find it online. And that's one of the successes I've had with Twitter class and my audience. We have this large community. It's not just,
I feel
12.
like I'm a part of it, by the way. Like,
Right.
like
Exactly.
I'm like, I am, right. Like I'm Twitter friends with a lot of your followers that I met commenting on your things. Cause I was,
Yeah.
I was back when all this racial hostility, I was just going to Twitter just to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Which just seems to be the type of people that you're responsive to, like that come with questions and not hearing my beliefs. And I saw like real conversations happening. Now I'm like friends with people in your network just by engaging there. So like, yeah, I feel like I'm a beloved part of the tribe, you know.
You
But
are a part of the beloved tribe. So are you, Allison. You're now indoctrinated.
yeah, well, we don't have a name, so you're part of the body movement family right now. But we'll think there's something cool in that. But
Definitely.
so and the other thing that probably happens with that too is now your followers are actually providing content for you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So it's like not only are you sharing their stories, but they're also sharing with you things that have worked in working with you. And then not only do they amplify it and market for you, but they provide you with new ways of thinking it. Like, oh, I didn't even know this would help you in this manner.
Yeah.
And now you're like, now you can share that with everyone, right?
Yeah. And actually that's how a little bit of how I was able to connect with the mother that we're working with today. So initially when I started my women's ministry, I just thought I was going to help single moms. And I come from that background of, I'm a single mom myself. So I'm like, hey, let me go help other mothers.
Yeah.
But this mom that I came across, one of the beloveds had shared her program with me. And I was just absolutely amazed at how this mom turned such a huge tragedy into something empowering.
Right.
And so the first question I asked him was, is she a single mom? Because that's my mindset, right? And he was like, oh no, she's married and da 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 da. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I had to stop limiting even myself. And I was like, I need to expand my content and my empowerment, not to just be about single Black mothers, but just Black mothers who are dealing with something as heinous as their children being murdered in the streets. So now it's just starting to grow. So even as new people are being connected to beloveds and they're bringing their stories, we expand. And for example, here's another one, Eliza Blue.
Yeah, I know her.
who I promote all the time. Every single month, we raise money to help her particular work because she's fighting human trafficking. And the reason I was drawn to her so much, well, actually, she started following me and Hotep Jesus. But
Yeah.
I noticed that she started to talk a lot about Black girls being trafficked. And nobody was talking about Black girl stories in this heinous industry. And so because she's white, by the way, because she was doing it and bringing it to the conservative platform, I said, I need to connect with her because I'm about Black empowerment. And if you're
Yeah.
white, Black, Asian, whatever, and you're talking about, hey, we want to help communities, I'm going to probably get your attention. So
Yep.
that's how the movement started to expand beyond just single moms. It's like now we're going to see about helping women who are at the forefront and who are fighting a cause that may be too hard for me to combat, but they're on the front line. So let me talk to Beloveds about raising money and then shooting money over to them. This
Yeah.
is just how the movement has just kind of grown.
It's
But it
grown.
started somewhere. It started with the seed. It started with what I knew. And
Yeah.
as I continued to contribute more and more, the audience started to give me, like you were saying, their own stories, and it
Yeah.
informed my content.
Yeah. I'm trying to, because I'm a big picture thinker. So I'm already like, we're only 14 episodes in. Half of our episodes have just been guests doing cool things in their space
Mhm.
because I want this to be like a movement. Like it's funny,
Yes.
we're the body movement, and movement is moving your body, but also we want to be a movement, and you have
Yeah.
movement in your name too. But and you can copyright that because you were before us. But it it's building the community of, and it's kind of the conservative thing of like free market, right? You have specialists in those areas,
Yeah.
but then they partner with people in other areas where they're not an expert,
Right.
and you become a real community.
Yes.
And I think that's a harder message than what the left is always saying. It's like, no, it's a collective thing.
Mhm.
Everyone, equality of outcome, not equality of
Yeah.
opportunity. And it sounds nice, but
Right.
but you said progressivism is not charity is your book, which I love.
Can we just go like, so Felecia, can you go, because Matt has been following you for a long time. I'm catching up with where with what you're doing. I've obviously read through, sent what he said, but for people listening in, like
Yeah.
everything you're talking about with the single moms and your programs, can
Yeah, I
you
wanted to
kind
get to
of
that.
give us you guys are pinholing a little bit on
Yeah,
going
that's right. We got
give
listeners.
me the scope of what you are doing. What does it look like in
And
everything about it, really?
yeah, and that's cool. Yeah, it's like we're going in reverse in the movie, right? We're starting at the end, but it's like, but
Storytelling too.
but it's I what's interesting too is because you're fighting an institution in politics which has grown too
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
We're fighting an institution in healthcare which has gotten too, I don't want to call it corrupt, but it's like broken and it's dysfunctional. So we got like two dysfunctional institutions.
Corrupt is good.
Corrupt is
Corrupt.
good.
You can call it
You're right.
corrupt.
You know what?
Vested.
Fuck
Vested
that.
interest.
Yeah.
Fuck it. It's
All right.
insurance companies. It's CEOs of
Big
insurance companies.
pharma. Yeah, I'm
I
with you.
won't go down that rabbit hole, but
Yeah.
it is fucking corrupt.
Yeah, we'll mind Felecia. We'll let her go off in politics. But we have corrupt, broken institutions.
Yes.
But the conservative way to do things, and sometimes what you do is conservatives call it and it's a cop out. They just say, oh, the free market, oh, the community, but then they don't go and build it. They just use that to combat the left. You're actually doing things in the community. So that's what I wanted to, and that will get to Allison's question of what are you actually doing? But you have real results of building a community, of what it looks like. So to Allison's point, can you give us that breakdown of what you're doing with single moms, how it all started, and how that actually leads to fighting an institution? Because we're trying to teach people you can't rely on healthcare right now. You have to learn to take care of yourself, which is a hard pill to swallow. If you're out of shape, you're in pain, like there's things you have to do. You can't go to your doctor saying, I'm going to get fixed by you. It's just not going to happen. You're going to get stuck in the system and you'll be on opiates before you know it. So, so to Allison's question, give us that over what you're doing with single moms, and then how that all ties together with like how that shows how you can fight against an institution by building up people at an individual level.
Certainly. So for your listeners, I'm the founder of the Felecia Killings Foundation, And we have several branches within our overall work. So we have our political space, which is the conscious conservative movement. We have our social space, which is really about empowering women. So initially, as I was sharing earlier, our focus at first was about helping single mothers to avoid dependence upon the government to help them with basic needs like food and shelter and things like that. So using my own experience of how after going through a hellish situation, how I lost everything and I had to go to government to get help because I was just not going to let my child starve. I noticed that each time I increased in my income as an entrepreneur, they wanted to decrease my benefits. So it put me in this rut. Like, I'm scared to lose this because I won't have enough money for food, but I want to make more money because this is the right. So I was in this place. And so I
My
decided
wife went through that with Obamacare, by the way.
oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you understand, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
what do we do? And so I decided I wanted to create a program for single mothers, and we call it Killingsville Communal Living. And it will be this training that teaches single moms how to use the communal living model, where they rent a very large house, like a 5-bedroom house, and each mother will have maybe one room, which is like a quarter. And instead of them worrying about paying $3,000 for rent, they could just pay $500. And so if they're only making like maybe $1,200 a month, they still have enough to feed themselves, to have protection, to just have community growing up, and then they can learn to build their own business. So that was the way we did it. And when we are working with such moms, we help them with grocery blessings, and we don't punish them as they increase financially. So if they're enrolled in our program, they can stay for as long as they really need. But once they get to this point where it's like, hey, you're making 6 figures, you don't need our grocery blessing anymore. But we don't want to punish them for increasing. And that's kind of how I felt when dealing with the government. Like, I'm being punished for doing good things. Right. So it started off that way. And just to get back, we have these branches. So you have the political one, we have the social one, we have the economic one as well. And this one is where I call it Leamore University. And this is where we are actually teaching women how to build online businesses and virtual ministries. So really the foundation of the Felecia Killings Foundation is based upon the principles that we rely on kingdom laws, as I mentioned earlier, to help us build social, political, and economic empires. But I needed to show the audience that this could be done. See, it's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to say like, oh, this is a really great idea.
Right.
But
the market, the community. Yeah.
Right. The market. Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, I said, I have to prove it. I have to prove to them that I can talk about kingdom principles and dealing with politics and actually getting great results. I have to talk to them about conservatism and how it can empower single moms and prove it. Right. So that's where I came from. And that's really the foundation of it. And so we do have team members and whatnot who are volunteering, as well as we're trying to move into this place where we're actually, hiring them full time eventually. I'm like, come on, Lord, help a sister out. But we grew from just me doing everything myself to now having team members. And so for your audience, that's really what we do. That's the crux of it. And for the most part, we've been online exclusively. So this is why the platform really grows, because we built a network, right? It's not just Twitter class that has 12,000 followers. It's my brother, Jeff Charles, who has almost 20,000. And then it's Maj Toure, who has over 100,000 on Twitter. And then it's Hotep Jesus, who has almost 200. So collectively, we're probably an audience of about 1 million, but it's because of the network. So our reach is so vast. And that's one of the things that I wanted. I really wanted to make sure I was pushing that out there. I didn't want this to just be about Felecia and my idea, right? I was like, no, this is actually how we're supposed to function as a healthy society. Like, I do my part. I'm good at it. I'm going to stay in my lane. I know folks keep saying, Felecia, you should run for office. I have to stay in my lane because I'm so good at it.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
someone like Sunny wants to run for office, everybody in the network is going to come behind her. Everyone's going to come and support her. Everyone's
Right.
going to throw their energy behind her
Yeah.
because we know she would be solid in that area.
And
Or with, go ahead.
yeah, and it really shows that it doesn't have to be crazy innovative ideas, does it? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like all you're
Right.
doing is you're providing a place to live and some financial assistance for food.
Right.
And,
Right.
and that's where people get into this talk of the handouts and how everyone on the
Yeah.
left is just looking for government handouts, which you can't blame them if you're climbing up the income levels, but going from $40,000 a year to 45 all of a sudden knocks you and
Yes.
disqualifies you for assistance. It's like, well, I'm better making 40.
Yes.
You're building a community like, well, screw the government, take them out of the equation, and which is
Yes.
what we're trying to do. Take healthcare out of the equation. Don't
Yes.
rely on it, but we'll set up those tenants. And it's
Yes.
not like this big complex thing. It's a roof and it's food.
Yes.
And that's all people, because people want to strive and people want to
Right.
go for more, right? And
Right.
that gets from the goddamn media, that gets put down on the Black community a lot. It's like you're
Yes.
just looking for handouts,
Yes.
and right. So it's like, no, people, they want to grow, they want to build,
Right.
and but there's hurdles in the way, and the hurdles in the way are generated by the state. And
Yes.
so if you just take the state out of the equation, probably like, there you go. Like
Success.
you're giving everyone the runway to just like sprint and grow. Right. And
Yeah.
that's,
Right. And that's the message that I've had to bring to conservatives consistently.
yeah.
So now the phrase is simple. Progressivism is not charity. So progressivism is just big government. It's just the
Yeah.
state. And they are not about charity because they will punish a person, a single Black mother, for increasing. I talk
Yeah.
about
And
examples
by the
of,
way, single white moms too, like
right,
lower
exactly.
middle class. This is where we can find that
Yeah.
common, right.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So I bring up the example of in California, there was this law, it's a progressive law called AB 5. And what it did was it crushed the freelance economy in California. Now, the freelance economy today, we make up about 34% of the overall workforce. So
Right.
imagine killing almost half of the workforce in California with
Yeah.
one progressive law.
Yeah.
And now Democrats or the far left, they do want to push this nationally through this PRO Act. So I've had to explain to conservatives and even Democrats,
Yeah.
you are trying to kill this Black single mother's livelihood. See, when I bring it to me, when I tell my story, when I tell the
Yeah.
story of others,
Yeah.
all of a sudden, progressive or Democrat laws don't look so attractive to certain folks. All of a sudden, it's like perspective happens for them. So just as I'm giving perspective to conservatives,
Yeah.
I'm doing the same thing for Black voters who think that the government is actually going to help in certain areas. And so
Right.
when I do it from this perspective, I get better results. And so that's really how my message has been able to grow and to increase. So while I do have those catchphrases like progressivism is not charity or the 1520 rise, I also make sure that everyone understands what that means. And then I demonstrate it for them. So even with Killingsville Communal Living, I started that one in California because it's just so difficult to be single and to have good living. So a friend and I, we partnered together and we were like, let's go rent a few rooms in a large house. And we just started to build our economics. And before long, my business grew. She and her career grew. And I was like, man, I got to expand this thing. So that's when Atlanta kind of opened up. And so I'm still trying to get the building blocks going out here. But for the most part, I teach and train other single mothers who are in different states. Like, you can start a communal living program out where you are. This is how I did it. This is what you can do. Here, I'll send some money to help get some funding so you can just eat and not stress about that. And for that reason, it just continues to grow. So we're demonstrating and we're teaching and we're preaching and we're bringing the message.
Yeah, that's so crucial because the proof of the work and saying community and individualism and accountability is it's there. So when people can see it, they're, like you said, they're more number one, they're more receptive, and number
Yeah.
two, even if they kind of disagree that there should be safety nets, and probably there should be in the government, to be quite honest, but they're more willing to have a debate at what
Yeah.
cost, or how that program even looks or is implemented, or if dollars are being wasted, or what those incentives are. Is like, all right, maybe somebody on the left will say, I still need these safety nets, but we want to mimic the way that you're doing it.
Yes.
At least that's a way to extend an olive branch and have a real discussion, versus you're just looking for handouts and you're just shouting community and never getting anywhere.
Yeah, most definitely. And these are the kind of conversations that I'm willing to have in Twitter class. And I think that's the difference between myself and a lot of the other, even the other influencers who are in our space. Like Sunny is intentional. She will not give her secrets out on Twitter. She reserves that for Sunny's corner.
Oh, she's
and
a tough follow
it.
sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm like, what is she talking about? Yeah.
But she makes it so that you have to listen to Sunny's corner.
To her show.
And it's brilliant, right?
Yeah.
That's a brilliant way she does it.
Yep.
Well, I, on the other hand, I have to show up every day. And I kind of put myself in that box because I started that way. And so people are expecting me to show up.
Right. Yeah.
So
you also don't have a national radio show that's 2 hours long and where you can just talk uninhibited. Like, yeah.
Right. So we do what we can with what we have. And again, that's what I hope to bring to new content creators. Always start with what you have and let your vision kind of give you the directions that you need. And each day, you'll be learning more and more. And I'm still learning myself, even with the platform growing as big as it has.
Very cool. Al, you got anything on that one? So
they're still drilling, so just give me a minute. Go ahead.
You're good. Yeah. So I guess, this has been great. This has been over an hour, a few minutes left. I wanted to talk about kind of institutions and the way that they're also trying to contribute to the heal, quote unquote, the healing. And I don't know if they are. And so I look very skeptically now at the media on all sides, corporations, and versus just doing, what you're doing is like making real impact. I look at corporations with their diversity inclusion programs and publishing, stats out there about their hiring practices, which on its surface is great. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but that I look at it skeptically and I'm like, you're taking the shine off of people like Felecia who have been doing this for years. So when Spotify, and I'm picking a company out, so maybe I'll get censored if I put this up on Spotify, but when Spotify posts on LinkedIn, I see the other day, our support for the Black community is unwavering. And here's some stats. And then, they turn people into numbers. And I'm like, maybe you did hire some more Black people and maybe you did donate some money to these organizations, but you put a PR statement next to it and you put it next to your logo and you centered yourself as the person who's solving these problems. Whereas there's somebody like you who's in the community on the front lines working with the population. And if Spotify could have gave you the microphone and said, and if Felecia came out and said, I'm working with Spotify, their work is unwavering and they are supporting me 100%. That resonates different with me.
Yes.
Do you read the room how I just read the room right there with what corporations are doing?
Yeah. And what's funny is, a couple of things. So last year, was it last year? Yes. Last year when BLM started generating millions in donations from corporations, I remember getting emails from, white female entrepreneurs who were like, we're so in tune and we just want to support Black communities and we're donating $10,000 to the local BLM. And I was just like, oh my God, why are you doing that? Because that money's not hitting the community. Now, I have always said that on the left, they use Black trauma to placate on white people's guilt for being white. And that's an emotion that they use to garner millions of dollars. On the right, it doesn't work. Like I've said
On
it
the
before,
right, they just say there's no problems.
right. They'll either say there's no problems or you can't guilt white conservatives for being white.
Yeah.
And that works and I've said it to Twitter class. I say you cannot guilt white conservatives for being white. You can just not do it. So that stuff does not work on them.
Yeah.
So if you want to get money from white conservatives, the easy way, you use white fear. You tell them that the big boogeyman on the Democrat side is coming to get them and Republicans will save their life. On the left, however, you guilt white people and they use Black stories, Black trauma, to tell them like, well, it's your fault. It's your ancestors' fault that Black people are suffering right now. So give us some money so that we can send it to them. Except it never hits the community. It never goes that far. So corporations, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because I know some of these entrepreneurs that I connect with. I know that they genuinely care, right? But they just don't. They're like other white conservatives. They don't even fellowship, so they don't know. Right. So they're trapped into the white guilt and whatnot. Yeah. But my point is that yes, if it would be much different if corporations actually connected with the Maj Tourés or myself or Antonia, who's on the ground teaching Black women about gun rights. It would be really powerful if they said, hey, we see what you're doing. We'd like to give directly to your org because we see the actual work happening. And then we turn around and say, yo, connect with so-and-so because this corporation really came through and sponsored what it is that we're doing. Right. That, of course, would be powerful, but it doesn't happen because corporations have their own gatekeepers. They have their own, protectors, if you will. Yeah. And as such, funding only goes to folks who are either the loudest. So while I do anticipate connecting with corporations very soon, I believe God will open those doors for me. And that's how I am. I just like, Lord, I need X amount of money. So, whoever has it, let's make it happen. Yeah. But when I'm talking to Black voters, or I'm saying like, hey, the movement is actually sponsored by grassroots white conservatives, it changes the game. Now I'm giving credibility to the conservatives in our space, and I'm telling them like, hey, let's bridge this gap. So it's worked both ways, but
it does. I guess I just like when Tim Cook from Apple comes out and makes a statement, it would mean more if he had you sitting next to him, right, and you saying the statement versus him saying it, because now it makes it look like corporate America, like the Black community couldn't solve these problems on their own. And it centers corporate America as you guys couldn't do it if we didn't step in. And if we're as the saviors, and if we're gonna be in this world of our words matter and our actions matter, well then taking humanitarian issues and putting PR statements and logos next to them takes all the life out of it and takes the people out of it. And so I'm curious if you're seeing it that way, because I've been in the corporate game for a long time, and I've donated to you a couple times, and we'll do so after the show for the record. But you're welcome. But well, thank you. But the point is, like, I see it all the time in my network, and I want to call it out. I want to say it's slightly BS. I want to say it's well-intentioned, but you're actually contributing to the problem, because it's the psychological effect too. So I'm just curious with people like you that are doing it and you are raising money and you can clearly see where the money's going and that it's not for a complicated cause. It's not a big elaborate program. It's for food. It's like, it's so simple and so easy. And then the results are so tangible that I feel like we need to see more of that. If corporations are going to step into this game and put their money where their mouth is, they need to do it in a certain manner besides the one that they're doing it right now.
Yeah. And I think that would be good to, and like I said, I might have connections, like there might be some beloveds who are part of corporate at that level, and they might be paying attention to Twitter class. They might be waiting for me to say, I need $100,000 donation like today. Right. You get what I'm saying? But I think because it took me actually a while to get used to fundraising and putting the message and saying, hey, would you like to contribute? It took actually Beloved saying, where can I donate? What can I do to help? And I was like, I need to provide a channel for them to feel like they're connected.
Again, you learned from your audience.
Right, exactly. So even with that, I'm having to make my take away my limitations. And so like I think yesterday I said, I'm going to just speak this in the atmosphere. I want to own a building out here in Atlanta that could be a center for women. I know that's going to take a lot of money, but guess what? Somebody has it, or they have the building for me. So I've had to learn that on my end. But I do think that corporations, and again, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Me too.
I think it's just because they only see Black people who are doing things on a social scale from the left. They're not going to search for Black conservatives on the right or Black Republicans, because typically the Black Republicans in the forefront are trash talking Black people. So it's just, it's automatic. They're going to go to the people that they see, like the BLM leaders who get millions of dollars from corporations, who sit on these panels, who sit on these podcasts with these individuals.
Oh, then the money doesn't go anywhere.
And it doesn't hit the communities. And that's the challenge. And that's when, if I was on the left, I would tell them, like, none of that money is hitting the community. Let's deal with this here.
Why don't they say that?
Okay. You know what? I can't say that they don't. I do know
that answers it all.
Or where is it going? I mean, so for me, like, again, like, this is way out of my scope. This whole conversation
We're blowing Allison's mind the past 10 minutes.
I don't even want to say uncomfortable, but that's why I'm just sitting here, like, because I'm just like, holy crap, right? But where does it go?
It just circulates in that upper echelon. So you have individuals like the founder of BLM who created a consultation firm where she does whatever. So the funding will go to her consultation firm, which helps fund her $4 million mansions in California or something like that. Or they will do speaking engagement. I'll put it like this: all the money just circulates up here. And it's not just on the Democrat side. We have the same thing happening on the Republican side. So millions of dollars were donated to Candace Owens and Blexit. None of that money, none of it hit the local Black communities. And I know this because these Black communities that have Blexit chapters, they don't get any attention. They get no marketing, and yet their founder has a national platform. So this lets you know that it's not even going and hitting where it's supposed to hit. So it just circulates up here, and whatever it is that they do, whatever loopholes they found, they work it. And so they just keep it up here. But what we're trying to do is start down here. Like, I'd rather start here than trying to get the corporate attention just yet, because I want the corporate to see, like, oh no, they're already doing the work. Let's write Felecia a check. Let's write Sunny a check. Let's write Maj a check. Because they already know it's going to work. I'm not going to present to them something fanciful like what Candace did with Blexit, telling Republican donors, like, hey, I'm going to get 15 to 20% of Black voters to vote for you.
You're not, well, whatever. And you know what? You're not even promising votes, right? You're like, you should just help the community, then you'll get the vote. Like,
then you'll automatically get the vote, because they will see candidates who actually support what it is that they're trying to do. And that was actually something I had to teach conservatives. I said, if you go this more community-based route, people will see you. They'll see you actually doing something. So it's easier for me to tell Black audiences on Twitter, like, hey, our conservative candidate, Asia, who's in California, throw your support towards her. Or Julian, who's in New Hampshire, or Ross, who is in Texas. These are our candidates so far, and they're Republican.
And they've come from your network.
Right. They're a part of the network. So Black voters already know, okay, I trust Coach Killings. I trust the movement. Oh, she's presenting these candidates. Oh, okay, let me hear what they have to say. And it's all because we took the time
Yeah.
to build community. And that is what works.
And I'm not, not to detract from your message and make it back to what we're trying to do, but we just had a strength and conditioner coach on who works with the youth and works with NFL players and pro
Mhm.
CrossFitters, and he was just saying fitness industry very much like politics. It's easy to become an influencer without any credentials,
Yeah.
and you can be an Instagram person doing cool stuff that's not beneficial. And
Yeah.
he was disheartened on our podcast saying he feels outnumbered
Mm.
because
Yeah.
there's too many fake players out there,
Yeah.
and stuff like Allison's doing, like she just broke away. She's doing cash-based practices. She doesn't deal with health insurance companies. You got to pay her out of pocket to see her, but she'll make sure you're actually getting quality care and you're not dealing with
Mhm.
the bullshit of insurance. So it's like we feel like he felt, and I agreed with him, that we're outnumbered. I feel like people are like, you are outnumbered, but I
Yeah.
guess that's the uphill battle, right? Like that's the fight
Yeah.
to show that
Yeah.
this is actually the way to do it.
Oh, I
Yeah.
like listening to you too, and like, being present every day on social media. That's something Fred talked about. Like, that's hard when you're in the trenches.
Yes.
When you are living your dream and, giving
Yeah.
everything you got in your everyday work. And then in order for people to hear your message above what the propaganda
Yeah.
I always go back to vested interest. Like,
Yeah.
I go back to the fact that Coca-Cola is a sponsor for freaking sports events versus like
Right. A
performance.
sugary drink versus like water and
Like,
healthy food. Right.
it just drives me nuts. But when you're in the trenches doing the work, and Matt knows this. I mean, he gets on me probably like 6 times before I even like his LinkedIn post for the podcast because I'm
Right.
running, right? Like I'm
Right.
running every day from start to finish.
Yeah.
That isn't an annoyance to me. It's just not there. And I love hearing that for you. Matt, just so you know, that's motivational to me to hear that, to have that presence every day.
This is why
Um,
this is why I
because
got her. She's a boss.
yeah, but it's not that time consuming. But I'm very similar to you. Like I don't want to just put something out. I want it to have a direction. I want it like, like the last thing I posted had a lot of backtrack first for a post that took me 3 minutes to write. But there was
Yeah.
a lot of preparation for that 3 minutes to
Yeah.
make
Like
my
I
message
said,
heard, understand what I'm doing. And but that social media presence for a lot of people on all avenues that are in the trenches doing the work is
Yeah.
hard.
and just think about this podcast, like with Felecia, like I'm going to cut up probably 2 to 3 minute clips, which means I have to listen to this hour and a half conversation probably 5 times.
Right.
And like write down like this really matters. I can write something with this
Yeah.
that will
Right.
resonate. Like it's a lot of back end work. So to have that scale and have a system and be processing so
Yeah.
that you're available and people see your message is something that you've been doing. And again, you've been doing it in a field that is so high tense and so emotionally versus, again, not that ours aren't, because healthcare in people's bodies is very important, but when we're
Yeah.
talking about people's values, the visceral reaction you can get from people sharing
Yeah.
a message, even if it's grounded in love, can be detrimental in terms of the response you get at times. And then you got to be prepared to fight that off and message, right?
Yeah, and I would suggest, Allison, I would suggest getting someone to follow you around as a videographer and just vlog, like just talk to the camera and,
Yeah.
and then let them handle it, right? Like just continue to do you, continue to be on the ground and let someone record you or, ask you a couple, whatever it is. But
Yeah.
my point is to just be as free and authentic as you possibly can be and use whatever it is that you have. Now, for me, I've committed to my thing full time because I have to show up now. This is my bread and butter
Yeah.
in addition to whatnot.
But again, you hit
But
that
I've
heavy
had,
pause button.
yeah, but
figured
I
it
have
out.
my team members at this point. So a lot of the things that they're doing, I did by myself for several years. But I'm glad I went in that direction because I'm now able to train them on exactly what I want. I know exactly what I want every single week,
Yeah.
and they execute it very well. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to be a CEO, if you will, over this group had I not actually done the actual, responsibilities in that work. So,
Right.
as you're growing, you'll start to eventually people will be attracted and they're going to be like, how can I help?
Right.
How can
Yeah.
I contribute?
Yeah.
And that's when you put them to work immediately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Delegation is key. That, I mean, again, again, not to steal Allison's thunder, but like the podcast was my idea because I saw how effective she was. And I have a former fitness background, and I was just like, every time you tell me to do something, it works, and we need to do this.
Yeah.
So I think, again, I think we're finding our voice. I think watching
Yeah.
people like you rise and build the network you have is just really inspiring and amazing to see. So
I remember, Matt, in our very first podcast, I said, I think you asked me, you said, oh, how big is this mountain to climb? Right,
Yeah.
about like going against the grain with the healthcare system.
Yeah, because we're calling out doctors, we're calling out pharmacists, we're calling out nurses for not being the best providers and not pushing against a healthcare insurance and pharmaceutical system that has grown too big for us to overcome. And it's why we have people hooked on opiates and back pain and all these inactivity crises. So being healthy is it's a problem. So to challenge an institution, which is what you're doing, Felecia, is crazy. And like you said, you're doing it down here at the ground level,
Yeah.
which is more impactful, but it's a slower climb, and you're carrying the weight a lot more
Yeah.
on that journey up. But I mean, to look where you are now, 4 years ago, I don't think you'd think you'd be here, right?
Oh, no, no. I had no clue. Like I said, I love my private life. I love just being a mom.
Yeah.
I love just freelancing and whatnot. And so after, the Holy Spirit asked me to do that, I said, sure, of course.
Yeah.
Thinking it's just going to be maybe 20 women. Oh, no, this thing is
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
But as you, like I said, every day you're going to increase every single time you add new content.
Yeah.
It just gives people another chance into your solutions.
Yes.
And I think that's what you have to do. That's why I felt compelled. Like I had to give these solutions away. They could not stay with me.
Yeah.
And in like manner, you got to do the same for folks who need what you have.
Right. Have you have you read like George Orwell and Ayn Rand, their works at all? Or
No, but Hotep Jesus is always talking about.
He's always talking about Orwell. Michael Malice, who I'm sure you know too.
Yeah.
He's a big Ayn Rand guy. I'm reading her books now. She back in 1980, she was saying, I want people to understand something. She goes, I'm not a conservative, but the country, she goes, the people are moving to the right. But she goes, the problem, this is 1980, the problem is there's no intellectual leadership on the right. They don't have a good way of communicating their ideas of what capitalism and real community and a market is. She's like, so that will be the destruction, that there's no leadership. And that was 40 years ago.
Yeah.
So I look at somebody like you, and not saying that we are left or right, but what you're doing is you're providing, with Sonny Johnson and Hotep, you're providing intellectual leadership.
Yeah.
You're providing people with an option and a choice, and then they can make their decision. You won't hold it against them, but you're going to have an honest conversation versus just yelling talking points back. I saw this on Cuomo. I saw this on Tucker Carlson. Let's see who remembered the most. You guys are actually having a real conversation. So it's been inspiring to watch. It's why we wanted to have you. And again, I think there's a ton of parallels in anything, in any online business people are trying to create. So totally love everything you're doing.
Thank you so much. I absolutely love this chat. Thank you.
That's great. You've been every guest has brought something very unique to the table so far. So what can we push for you? I'd love if you would share a link with me after this, and we'll push out when I share clips. So like, hey, if you want to donate to this, we'll share the link where people can put their PayPal and your website, anything you want to plug here at the end before we sign off.
You guys, your viewers can go to FeleciaKillings.org. That's Felecia with 2 E's. And FeleciaKillings.org/give. You can find some of our different branches that our different initiatives, I should say. And if they want books, if they want to learn about the movement, the philosophies, we have our bookstore. They can go over there, or they can join Twitter class.
Of course. And Yeah, and we'll put all these links in the comments on our YouTube channel. And
Yeah.
you're not on LinkedIn anymore, right? You were for a little
I
bit.
am. I just hopped back on, so I am on LinkedIn now.
Okay, because that's again, I'm on Twitter and Insta, and we'll tag you there when we share some stuff from this episode. But I'll definitely tag LinkedIn's kind of where collectively we have the biggest following, just because I was in the blue pilled matrix for a while there. So anyways, we'll share everything over there and tag you and hype if people want to give so that they can find you. Again, hopefully if people, if we get 1 to 2 people to give to you, that's a win in my book. But we just want, we're inspired by your message. We love what you're doing. Whether we agree on policies, we didn't even have to talk about that today, right? Like that's the whole idea, is just like some more to cause, and then down the road, once we're all on the same side working towards something, then you can have real debates around government and politics and all that stuff. So
yes, of course. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks everyone. Like and subscribe down below, of course. This has been B.O.D.Y Movement episode 14 with the coach. See you.
Yo, brand new intelligent black lady.